I love the way people are after I've given them the food and the way they appreciate it and the way it makes them happy.
My name is Nadia, and I'm a Brooklyn-based artist, filmmaker, and the host of Sahtain. I use art, food, and healing spaces to redefine what it means to nourish ourselves. As a Palestinian American living in diaspora, I connect to my roots through our cuisine. There are many others like me who grew up far from our ancestral lands. You could call us third culture kids. The scents, tastes, and unique memories made in the kitchen ground us and connect us to each other. Come with me on a journey of remembrance as we explore third culture kitchens and the plant allies that bring us home. Cardamom is considered to be one of the world's oldest cultivated spices for culinary and medicinal purposes. It was even used in perfumes for its very strong aroma. The Gulf region was central to the global spread of this spice and others. For Dina Macki, a Omani-Zanzibari chef, food writer, and food developer, cardamom is the scent of home.
Cardamom is like the basis of all of our food, particularly Zanzibari food. I say that, but Omani food also has it. So I will never not see cardamom in a dish. And particularly, I used to notice it when I was younger with sweet food. Every Zanzibari sweet dish has cardamom. It's essentially almost like a replacement for vanilla, in terms of my grandmother's perspective anyway. I grew up in a place called Portsmouth, which is in the south of England, right next to the sea. My mother was born in Zanzibar, and she was part of the Omani-Zanzibaris that were there. And then in 1964, there was a revolution and she moved to the UK. While my dad was born in Bahrain, his family moved back to Oman when he was very, very young, and that's where he grew up. My mum went to Oman in her teens, which is where she met my father. And then she came back to the UK to give birth to me and raised me there. There was a community of Zanzibaris that were all there and they stayed there. And so it was almost like comfort to them. It's where they kind of always felt like home. And my mum wanted to come back and be with her parents. And she wanted to make sure I had that Western appreciation and Middle Eastern appreciation. I feel like now I appreciate the balance that I have.
It's very common for a lot of us who grow up between cultures to just feel like out of place and to just sink into that feeling. But it can be hard to be empowered by that and recognize like it's a very cool, very unique place to be.
Yeah, and it's not like I always appreciated it. I would say probably maybe when I got to like mid-uni, growing up was very, very difficult because I went to like an all-English school. All my friends were blonde and blue-eyed. I literally didn't understand how I was Omani, how I was an Arab, and I hated that I didn't fit in. But once I came into my own skin and I actually started to mix with a lot of multicultural people, that's when I realized actually I'm really lucky. I have both. When I was younger, especially when I was very, very young, my grandma was always cooking for the community. So she constantly had orders coming in and she'd get me to join in. She'd like throw me a bit of dough here and get me to roll it. I was always cooking with her. All the food was constantly food from Zanzibar, food from Oman. You know, there's always fresh rice that you could smell boiling away. Whereas I would go to school and everyone's eating cold sandwiches. And I just, this whole concept of how life was very different. So when my friends would come to my house, I never understood why they were so like, wow, what's going on in here? There was always a family in our house. There was always people in our house. There was always food being cooked. Whereas you'd go to their houses, it was very quiet, very opposite. The houses smelled of fresh air and not rice and curry type of things. Even though I knew I could speak another language, I never even spoke that in school, never even mentioned that I spoke it because I always felt embarrassed and that it wasn't right. My friends in school found it weird that I was someone different. If I even tried to identify with my culture, like when I was fasting in school, I was always trying to explain that to my friends and they'd laugh at me or they'd find it funny. And, so then I got to a stage where I was like, no, I'm just going to be English and that's all I'm going to identify as. Uni was the breakthrough. First year of uni, I had to start cooking. And it was actually when I started cooking, that's how I connected. And that's how I kind of found myself. I was able to relate through the food. So I'd be cooking something and someone would be like, well, why do you cook this dish? Like, why do you cook biryani? Isn't that Indian? And I'd be like, no, my grandmother was born in Zanzibar. This is what they cook there and this is why they cook it. And so I just kept kind of doing it through uni. I was always known as that person that would bake the cake or make the food. I noticed that when I was posting things on my Instagram, it was always very random. I actually started exploring more of Omani food and Zanzibari food, whereas before that, especially when I was in uni, I was cooking anything. So this was my chance to kind of represent the whole country and the food we had to offer and introduce it to people. So I just kept going with the Instagram, and then I was like, I need to find another way to introduce people to this food. So that's when I started doing supper clubs. And I haven't done many since the pandemic, but when I started them, you know, they were selling out. People wanted something different. And so then that was another way for me to feed people without having to have a restaurant. The thing about Oman was, in its whole history, it had a really big maritime history, and they had a lot of people come into the country. Because of where we're positioned on the map, it meant that business and trade was always done via us. We're heavily intermingled, which makes it so hard to say exactly what our food is. We're extremely known for fish, particularly tuna. Then we're particularly known for coconut because of Zanzibar. Then dates are a really big, important part of Oman. And then because of India and Pakistan, we have all the spices. So the cinnamon, the cardamom. I actually used to hate it as a kid, and I never knew why I hated it. And then I started to get older, and my taste buds changed, and I really appreciated it. And so I ended up becoming like my grandmother in the sense that everything has cardamom. I will literally substitute the vanilla for cardamom. Till today, my friends always have a running joke about how I just use cardamom like vanilla, and I think it's so normal.
Like, what's the personality of cardamom to you?
Do you know, for cardamom, like, you add it into something, and I always find it enhances whatever else it's with. I can add it to something that has mango, and it's not going to take away the mango. But for me, it's just warmth. It reminds me that this is our food, and this is home food. This is my grandmother's food. We have a specific donut called a mandazi, and it's a coconut and cardamom donut. You would never know that someone's frying a mandazi if it didn't have the cardamom in it. You add a cardamom to that donut, and then the whole house is smelling of something that's frying cardamom. So you instantly know that's mandazi. Whenever I used to talk about, for instance, mandazi, I would never ever mention that it's a cardamom and coconut donut. I'd be like, you know, it's a donut. For some reason, I've noticed that when I look at many British chefs and food writers, whenever they make a dish, they're like, oh, this is cardamom and rhubarb pie. And I'm like, why do you need to identify the cardamom? It's been put on such a level that it's such a special spice that we need to let you know we have cardamom in it. Because obviously they don't use it every day like us. They put it on a pedestal to let you know this has cardamom, and then suddenly it's something special. But we use it every day. We use it because it makes a lot of food better, and you can taste when it hasn't got it in it. It's amazing how this one spice, and especially with the cardamom, it can literally be one cardamom clove that you put in, and it makes a huge difference to what you're making. So in Oman, you grow dates, but before you get to the date stage, you get to another stage called ratab. And ratab is basically when they're yellow and red, and they're very raw and hard. We also eat them like this, and we eat them just normally, just popping them in our mouth. I remember taking a handful. So I brought them back and I boiled them with some sugar, and I was like, oh, let me put some cardamom in there. And I actually chucked in quite a bit of cardamom, and my friends went wild. They're like, what are you doing, Dina? That's too much cardamom. I was like, no, don't worry, trust me. And I left them to boil and boil and boil. And then I put them in some pastry and made like a galette. And when we went to eat this, it tasted like marzipan, tasted like almonds, tasted like marzipan. And I was so amazed at the way cardamom was able to change the flavor. Yeah, dates and cardamom is definitely up there on something we do quite a bit.
Ahlan wa sahlan bikum, and welcome back to our kitchen. Today we are with our dear friend Cardamom. Now, cardamom is, to me, it just, when cardamom is in a dish, it just adds that little extra level of, I want to say luxury, but not because it's a luxury item, but because it feels very, very elevating. And in my conversation with Dina, we talked about how it's just used in both savory and sweet dishes. I'm familiar with putting it in broths and soups, and you know, just a little bit can go such a long way, but it also is wonderful in sweet dishes. One thing that's very, very common to do with cardamom is to use it with dates, and using that to then stuff other sweets. But today I'd like to keep it very simple and show you how I would make date balls, which are just a really delicious little snack. Very powerful little snack with nuts, rolled in coconut, and pistachio, just for fanciness. And all of it will be tied together with the elevation, the sophistication of cardamom. I have a bunch of chopped dates here. I chopped them by hand, so they're kind of rough. But basically what we're gonna do is mix these with some chopped walnuts. I always like to buy whole cardamom. I actually like to put little cardamom seeds in my smoothies. I just open one of these up and put one in a smoothie, and it just elevates the whole thing. Actually, a date and cardamom smoothie is pretty divine. Dates and cardamom just go really well together. They're good friends, so that's why we're leaning on that today. So I'm just gonna put 1 cardamom pod in my pestle and mortar and crush it up. Actually, we're gonna put 2 cardamom pods. Dates are a natural source of sweetness. You know, I like to use dates as my sugar source or sweetener in so many different things. That with cardamom just kind of up levels the whole experience. Just crushing these in here. And we're gonna put these in our little mixing bowl here. So I have my, oh my gosh. See, already it just has this incredible aroma. Cardamom really does indicate home and I think celebration. Cardamom feels very celebratory to me, and it always has. So putting some chunks of dates in here, and then I'm going to be doing this with walnuts. I know that people like to make these kind of proteiny date balls with other materials. I am gonna use walnuts today, and I'm also gonna crush them in my pestle and mortar just because I like crushing things in this. It feels good. So with these sorts of things, they can be as chunky or as smooth as you like. If you wanted to add this to a food processor with some hot water and all of these ingredients, you could really bring it together to a very smooth consistency. Let's just do a few more walnuts here. Now, because of the nuts, these are just really fortifying. It can be really nice with your breakfast or just a really hefty dessert. These already smell so nice. Into here. I'm also gonna add one thing that is a little bit different to this, and that is flaxseed meal. Flaxseed meal is just incredibly healthy, right? It's full of omega-3s, it's really good for digestion, and added into this, you barely even notice it. You really don't notice it at all. So I'm going to add a few spoonfuls of this. And the ratios for these are really not exact. It's based on the texture that you're looking for, right? So I'm gonna mix these by hand, incorporating all the dates and the walnuts together. And at this point, you have what is a really nice filling that you could put in pastries or cookies. You could roll into any kind of a dough. You could stuff it at the bottom of a cake using these nuts. If you added more nuts, you could actually line something with this, like a tart, or put a crust on top using this. That could be really nice. So just adjust the ratios as you like, but really this is it's very simple. And you'll have something really special. And it's also fun to do. It's nice to do with the kids. It's nice to do in a family setting. Oh, that smells so good. You also can try a little bit at this point and see whether you want more cardamom. Sometimes your cardamom might be stronger than someone else's, so this is a good moment to taste it and see if you want to add anything or shift anything. Wow, no, that's very good. So I have this kind of mush of dates and nuts together. All we want to do is I have some desiccated coconut and crushed pistachios. Pistachios just because, you know, I love the taste of pistachios. And we're gonna just take a chunk of our filling, roll it into a ball. It's already very sticky. And then we just roll it in our coconut and pistachio. You might wanna press it in at certain points, just to get the shape that you want and make sure that it all sticks. And they become less sticky once you have them rolled in that coconut, more something you can actually pick up. They're very cute. I'm making just a few here, so I'm gonna place them in this little plate, but you know, you can make these for a group. I think that they're really nice either at the beginning of the night, or they'd be perfect along with some tea to really end the night. They're so pretty. They look so cute. Just rolling a little snowball through the snow. So then you've got your sweet little date balls. It's a snack, it's a dessert. You can top a cake with these. Fancy. I'm gonna try one now. You know what? I'm glad that they have the chunkiness of the walnut, because that really gives them the crunch that they really need. Some sweet treats for me. Do you have a special way that you like to incorporate cardamom into your cooking, whether it's sweet or savory? Let us know, let us share knowledge together. This is such a special ingredient. Cardamom is something that is truly indicative of this whole region and the many people who've passed through it and found homes here. And I hope that you feel just as regally connected as I do when you consume this beautiful, beautiful spice. Thank you so much for joining us and watching. As always, alf alf sahtain, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.